We begin with U.S. Congressman Mike Pence of Indiana. He's chairman of the House Republican Conference, one of the leaders of the House. You know, I have to ask you, sir, what is it, you know, Steve Schmidt, who ran John McCain's campaign for president last year, was pretty honest recently in the diagnosis in the postmortem, and he said the Barack Obama for president campaign was really a continuation of the Bobby Kennedy campaign back in the 60s and had all the passion of the anti-war movement. My question to you, sir, what gives passion to Republicans these days? What turns them on the way fighting the Iraq war or against the Iraq war has done for Democrats?
Well, I think that returning our government to some fiscal sanity, putting an end to this long train of borrowing and spending and bailouts is what turned out, you know, hundreds of thousands of people at tea parties, Chris.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that a return to fiscal discipline, to turning our federal government back toward that lodestar of a balanced federal budget, making the kind of hard choices in Washington, D.C. that every American family and every American business and family farmer is making, I think that's a rallying cry that I'm hearing across Indiana and across this country.
But who believes that? Because under George W. Bush, we doubled the national debt. If you want to go back to the lodestar of balanced budgets, you got to go back to Bill Clinton. He's the last guy to balance the budget. Do you want to go back to Clinton?
Well, it's a fair point that the last Congress to balance federal budget was the Republican Congress under President Clinton. And it's a fair comment. Look, the criticisms of runaway federal spending certainly extend back into the Bush years. As you know, Chris, I was one of the harshest critics of big government republicanism during the Bush era. But, you know, you asked the question not about, you know, Republicans in Washington, but people across this country who, by and large, generally will vote Republican or are interested in Republican values. I think the key to winning back the hearts and minds of those millions of Americans is to turn our party back to a practiced, real commitment to fiscal discipline and limited government. We marry that with a strong commitment to national defense and an unapologetic commitment to traditional moral values. And I think we'll have the agenda that we can carry forward into the future.
What do you think of these polls that show that only 1 in 5 people today, men and women, 1 out of 5 say they're a Republican? 1 out of 5. I've never seen either political party dip that low. Have you?
Well, I don't know. I don't really have much of memory for polling numbers.
You'd remember that, baby.
Well, you know, that's a fair
1 in
point.
5.
You know, it does sound to me a little bit like the number of Americans who said they were Republicans before a Californian named Ronald Reagan came into the White House. I think when Ronald Reagan became president, about 20% of Americans said they were Republicans. When he left office, he had doubled the size of the party. Why? Because Ronald Reagan arrives in Washington, D.C. with a strong commitment to a national defense, with a commitment to balanced budgets and fiscal discipline. It's tough in a Democratic Congress, you might remember, and also with an unapologetic commitment to traditional moral values. That combination of American ideals put into practice, not just talked about, was the prescription then. I'll be honest with you, I believe it's still the prescription today, Chris.
You know what about Reagan? I was there because he knocked our socks off. I was working for the other guy, and he was damn good because he stood there in front of the Statue of Liberty, or rather the Statue of Liberty, actually, in New Jersey, out on that plane, in that regular shirt he was wearing. And I'll never forget it. And he talked about American patriotism. He was passionate. He was a romantic about American life. Do you have anybody in your party that can arouse those passions of positive love of country the way Reagan could? I mean, he was bigger than just complaining about high taxes. He was an American hero. You got one now.
Well, let me say there's an awful lot of talented men and women in this party across the country. But let me say with authority, I know we had one until this last Saturday night. You know, when I became a Republican, I started out as a Democrat, Chris. It may come as a surprise to you in my early political years, but when I heard the voice of Ronald Reagan and when I saw the example and heard the voice of Jack Kemp, that's when I became a Republican. And, you know, that was a tremendous loss to our party. But as we think about how we find our way forward, I got to tell you, Jack Kemp's large-hearted conservatism, his belief in free market entrepreneurial capitalism, his commitment to equality of opportunity for all Americans, his commitment to traditional values, we go looking for a role model for a 21st century GOP. Jack Kemp is my pick.
The only problem is he talked about the Big Tent, but he didn't get too far. Let's take a look at, and I like Jack Kemp. Let's take a look at his verbal shot today from Jim Bunning, the senator from Kentucky, against his fellow senator from Kentucky and fellow Republican Mitch McConnell. Quote, "Do you realize that under our dynamic leadership of our leader, we have gone from 55 senators to probably 40 in 2 election cycles. And if the tea leaves that I read are correct, we'll end up with about 36 after this election cycle. So if leadership means anything, it means you don't lose approximately 19 seats in 3 elections with good leadership." There you have 2 people from the same state, both Republican U.S. senators, one whacking the other one. Is that trouble for your party when you have that kind of discord?
Well, you got to remember, I grew up in southern Indiana, and so seeing sharp elbows across the Ohio River down in Kentucky is not a new thing to me. Look, I don't want to get in between those 2 senators in that argument. I really do believe the way back for the Republican Party is to renew and practice our commitment to fiscal discipline, like opposing the stimulus bill, opposing the president's recent budget bill, and opposing the national energy tax in the cap and trade legislation that's going to result in higher utility rates on virtually every American. We get back to defending the interest of taxpayers, of utility rate payers. We get back to defending the interest of the American people. The American people will rally to our side.
You know, the Democrats have a lot of people who are passionate about climate change, people like Al Gore, and they'll go out there and fight for it. They'll campaign for it. Young people especially really care about green stuff. My wife's a big green person. But Republicans aren't known for being green. Your party's come up with this alternative, but nobody really believes you got any passion on this subject. If there's any passion on this subject, it's Limbaugh. It's people like Glenn Beck, who don't believe in climate change. It's people like Jim Imhoff, who don't believe it. How can your party be credible on dealing with CO2 emissions, with greenhouse gases, when the loudest voices in your party don't believe in it? They just don't believe in it.
Well, let me tell you, and I think the science is very mixed on the subject of global warming.
Okay, well, then how can you get excited about it? Then why should your party believe you're going to get serious about it if you say the science is mixed?
Yeah, it's a fair question. But look, I'm all for clean air. I'm all for clean coal technology. I'm sure reducing CO2 emissions to be a positive thing. You're going to see Republicans, like at our Energy Summit today, you're going to see us oppose this massive national energy tax in the cap and trade. But you're also, Chris, going to see Republicans come out with an all-of-the-above strategy, more opportunities to explore our own domestic reserves, oil, natural gas, and coal, clean technologies, fuel efficiency standards, conservation, wind, solar, nuclear. We call it an all-of-the-above strategy, and you just wait and see. We're going to go all across the country with these energy summits, hear from the American people, and we're going to educate the American people on a 21st century Republican agenda for the environment.
You want to educate the American people about science and its relevance today. Do you believe in evolution, sir?
Do I believe in evolution? I embrace the view that God created the heavens and the earth and the seas and all that's in them.
Right, but you believe in evolution as the way he did it.
The means, Chris, that he used to do that, I can't say, but I do believe in that fundamental truth.
Did you take biology in school? Did you take science, which is all based on evolutionary belief and assumption?
Well, Chris,
do you believe? The reason I'm asking this, I'm not just picking a fight. If your party wants to be credible on science, you've got to accept science. Do you?
Yeah, I always wanted to play and inherit the win, but on the global warming issue, I know that in the mainstream media.
See how you're hedging? This is why people don't trust Republicans.
In the mainstream media, Chris, there is a denial of the growing skepticism in the scientific community about global warming.
Well, do you have is there a rising skepticism about evolution?
Republicans are more than willing to stand for a cleaner environment and cleaner air. We're going to promote clean coal technologies, give incentives, but we're not going to raise a national energy tax on every household in America.
Okay. Do you believe we should be teaching science in school or creationism? See, this is the problem. I asked you, do you have a passion? And I don't think the Republicans have a passion for global warming and issues like the green movement. You have skepticism about it, which you've admitted. You've been very honest here. You've admitted you have a problem with your credibility on fiscal responsibility the last 8 years. You've admitted that you have a split position on the issue of global warming. I would argue you have a very strong split position on the issue of science. You have people in your party who don't believe in stem cell research and federal funding of that, who don't believe in evolution.
Oh, come on, Chris.
Well, let me ask you this. Does your party agree on stem cell
but an exploration? Science is an exploration of demonstrable fact, isn't it? I think in our schools we should teach all of the facts about all of these controversial areas and let our students, let our children and our children's children decide based upon the facts in the science. Now, you talk about ignoring science. So you accept the scientific
method then? You accept the scientific method, therefore you still hold to this belief about...
Chris, come on, I accept the scientific method, but what the administration did on stem cells was ignore scientific breakthroughs that obviated the need to destroy human embryos for research. You know that. They ignored all those major breakthroughs that made destructive embryonic stem cell research no longer necessary. The Obama administration and Democrats in Congress put ideology over science with that recent decision in stem cell funding.
Here's the ludicrous part, and you're obviously as educated as I am, Congressman. I'm not challenging your bona fides to have this argument. But there are people on your side of the argument who believe that all the prehistoric bones we've discovered in the world, all the dinosaur bones and all that stuff was somehow planted there by liberal scientists to make the case against the Bible. There are people that really are against science in your party who really do question not just the science behind climate change, but the science behind evolutionary fact that we were taught, you and I, in our biology books. They don't accept the scientific method. They believe in belief itself. And once you hold that truth, that I'm not going to be busted here on science, I'm not going to lose the argument on science, people say, I don't think your party really believes in progress, in human progress.
You know, it's an interesting straw man you put up. I don't
I've
know
asked
that
you, do you believe in evolution? Let me get back to the primitive question.
I don't know too many Americans that actually think that way, Chris. I
don't think you question, sir. I think you believe in evolution,
science.
But you're afraid to say so because your conservative constituency might find that offensive.
No, I've said to you, Chris, I believe with all my heart that God created the heavens and the earth, the seas, and all that is in them. How he did that, I'll ask him about someday.
But you don't believe it. You don't take a fundamentalist view of the 7 days of creation, do you?
Chris.
I'm just asking. Do you?
Chris, where are we going with this?
Where we're going is the question.
Is this the caricature of how Republicans are anti-science
because I've taken
and
polls because there are polls that show that a huge percentage of the American people don't believe in evolution. A lot of people don't believe in climate change, and I'm just questioning your passion of your party for climate change. You've spent today, your party, talking about your passionate commitment to climate change legislation as an alternative to what the Democrats are doing on cap and trade. And I'm saying I don't trust it because I don't think your party's passionately committed to science or to fighting global warming or to dealing with the scientific facts we live with. That's all I'm saying.
You know, tell me what you really think, Chris.
That's what I really think.
I'm in the party of Teddy Roosevelt. I'm in the party of that has a long and storied history in conservation. I think Teddy Roosevelt created the first national parks.
Right.
And look, you know, and I've supported extensive increases in funding to the National Institute of Health. That happened under Republican administrations and Republican Congresses. This anti-science thing is a little bit weak.
The trouble is that your Mount Rushmore now includes Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck, Sarah Palin, and these characters that don't share either your intellect or your honesty. And thank you for showing your honesty today. U.S. Congressman Mike Pence, leader of the Republican Conference, in fact, the leader of it, and a leader in the House of the Republicans. Coming up,
Thanks, Chris.
The news that John